What's up guys, this is Stephanie here from Two Girls One Cut, and this is the first video in a series of what I wish I knew type videos. What I want to cover in this video is what I wish I knew when I got started doing epoxy tumblers. There's so many videos out there that are super long, and I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible because in this video I really just want to go over the supplies that you're going to need to get started. Obviously you're going to need a variety of different tumblers, and we'll talk about where to get those later, but make sure you check the reference document at the below the video in the description. The Two Girls One Cut reference document is constantly growing. We've got tutorials, links to the products we're using, and I'm going to continue to add to that as we go. So the first thing is, what is epoxy? Epoxy is basically a liquid that combines a hardener and your resin to make basically some sort of plastic, and that's what's going to go over the outer coat of your cups to give them this beautiful shine as well as protect anything that is underneath them. Keep in mind this is not dishwasher safe and it can't get super hot, so those are things you want to think about when you're getting into it, because a lot of people are like, well, I just want to be able to dishwash my vinyl cups. This should not be used with the dishwasher. So here I have two different brands of epoxy, Pro Marine and Alumilite, and that is Amazing Clear Cast. This was the first brand that I used when I got started, and then I've switched to this, and I also have some KS resin coming. I'm not sponsored or an affiliate of any of those just yet, but this is what I've used, and my only tip for when you're mixing these is I always pour my A first. A is very viscous, it's thick, it's dense, and when you are mixing most of these, you're just going to use a 1-to-1 solution by volume, not by mass. There are some that you are going to need a scale to weigh, but when you're measuring your epoxy, I just use these little 30 milliliter measuring cups, and you can get packs of 50 or 100 from Amazon delivered right to your door. You can wipe them out and then reuse them, or you can just toss them away. I also have a silicone mixing set that I purchased, and that comes with measuring cups that look like little beakers. Now, I am a scientist by trade, and I will tell you that when you're using beakers, the measurements inside of a container, the larger the container gets, the less accurate that those are going to be. And when you're mixing epoxy, you really want to be as close to 1-to-1 as possible. So I really do prefer to measure with these cups and then mix that into the larger cups so that it can set up and I can pour from there. This kit also came with smaller little mixing bowls, which is great if you're mixing colors, because that way you're not going to be wasting a whole lot. But I also do like to use Dixie cups if I have a whole lot of coloring going on, or if I'm going to do an epoxy pour. Dixie cups are great because you can get a huge box of those at like Walmart, for example. You are definitely going to need popsicle sticks, and you can pretty much get an unlimited supply of them from the Dollar Tree or from Amazon, so take your pick on that. Another great Dollar Tree find is these little pop-up bottles. So this top just flips off, and you can depress this and it'll dispense the liquids that you need. And the liquids that I have here is I have 70, 91, and 100% alcohol. The other two are isopropyl. 100% is denatured, which I believe is ethanol. You can get that at your hardware store or the paint section of Walmart. And then I have one that's acetone. Acetone and epoxy don't play well because epoxy essentially sets up and becomes a plastic, and acetone eats plastic. So you definitely want to make sure you get a container that will contain it without being melted away. This will melt rubber gloves, so keep it in mind for that. I also have a spritzer bottle that I use with 91% alcohol, which makes a lot of really cool effects when you are playing around with epoxy. And then I have a little pump dispenser bottle that I use for alcohol as well, because it's great to just, like, if you get some epoxy on your hands, to just pump that into your hands, wipe that off with a paper towel. You can quickly squeeze some onto a paper towel and wipe up your work surface. Silicone work mats are also a great investment because they are going to be able to be wiped down easily. The epoxy is just going to peel right off of that for you. And then a couple of tools that you may like are these silicone little spatulas, and I personally like to apply epoxy and wipe it down with my finger. I feel like I have more control that way, but this is great, especially if you're going to do just a little bit amount or a little bit of an amount, or if you're going to be doing some other projects with it. When it comes to getting that glassy finish and getting bubbles out of your epoxy, you need to be able to hit the epoxy with a heat source. I have two that I like, and a lot of people argue which one's better. Both. I have them both. I use them both on every cup, everything I'm using with epoxy, because they have different roles. The heat gun is a great way to heat up your epoxy, get it flowing, and it does actually pop a lot of the bubbles. Some of the smaller bubbles it won't get, but a bubble is just a little pocket filled with air, and when that gets hot enough, it's going to rise to the surface and evaporate out or pop. So the heat gun's going to do a great job there, but it definitely is going to be necessary if you're going to use epoxy to apply glitter to your tumbler cup. The next is a torch. I use a butane torch just because it's super affordable. This is basically like one you would find in a cooking section for chefs, and you just fill that up, but a lot of people say propane does a little bit better job. This can get in there and pop all those micro bubbles, but you have to be very, very careful because it can actually cause the epoxy to burn. So I usually just hit that very quickly. I also like to have a storage so that I can pull my cups off of the turner when I'm not using them, and then I can continue to use my turner. So I'll have a whole video on how to apply epoxy and what to do, but typically I only let my cups sit on the turner for about 5 to 6 hours, and I take them off, and then I can put more cups on. So it's great to have a nice base that you can use to pull your turners and pull your turner arms and your cups and set those aside. Now, of course, the most important thing when you're doing cups is going to be that cup turner, and the purpose of the cup turner is to keep the epoxy in motion. It is a liquid that is eventually going to harden and become a solid, so you don't want it to drip down and create all sorts of dripping lines and things like that on your cup. So you keep it in motion. And so here I have a custom cup tumbler that my husband and I designed and built for my house, and this workbench that we built for me as well. But you can find all sorts of plans and everything. This is actually a prototype of one of the earliest cup turners that I used when I was getting started. We just mounted a motor on the back, stuck the turner arm in here. You can use PVC pipes. We like to use the dowel rods with a little socket that locks right into the end of the motor with a magnet onto it. That way it's like really nice and secure. So whatever you choose for your cup turner is totally up to you. The biggest things that you want to keep in mind is just making sure it's going to be level and making sure that you can control the motion. I like to start my cups turning this way because I'm right-handed, so I can roll the epoxy over, and then after it's all smoothed out, later on I'm going to turn it the other direction just so we don't get any lumps or weird lines on the cup. Alright guys, that is all for this video. I really just wanted to go over some of the tools that you're going to need to get started. And if you go to the description of this video below, you can find a list along with a link to this video in the Getting Started section. Make sure that you bookmark that 2 Girls 1 Cut reference document, because we're going to continue to load it up with information that's going to be helpful for you as you continue your journey as a maker, both with epoxy and with anything to deal with your Cricut. I'm also going to have some tutorials about acrylic paints and things like that. Alright, I'm hoping to do a what I wish I knew when I got started or whatever every week with different tips and tricks. So please be sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video if you found it helpful. Liking and subscribing really helps out the channel so we can continue to bring these videos to you for free. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you next time.